system is broken. And Biden needs to confront that and say, we're going to have to reform the whole system. I would wish he'd do something much more extreme, like say the old asylum system is dead. No one is coming in through that process. You have to apply from your home country.
Which was a Trump policy.
Which was a Trump, and also the Mexico, you have to be in Mexico to apply. I think that's all correct.
So strategically, you think that
if
Biden would tack towards Trump policies, he would have actually a better political chance?
And it's also the right policy, because the old asylum system is being gamed by millions of people.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. You know it's bad for President Joe Biden when CNN is basically admitting that, Biden should implement Trump's border policies, okay? Biden should be tougher on the border, okay? Which, normally CNN would say is racist and xenophobic and, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's basically what MSNBC is saying. That's what Jen Psaki is saying about the idea that, hey, we should not have an open border where we allow a bunch of illegals into the country, some of whom, might interfere in our elections.
And a clear and present danger to the integrity of our election system. And that is the threat of non-citizens and illegal aliens voting in our election. It's true that Democrats have expressed a desire to turn non-citizens into voters. That's what this open border has been all about.
It's the combination of a wide open border and obstruction of any effort to verify the citizenship of who votes in our elections. These things are all combined in effort to end our Republican form of government.
Okay, every time Stephen Miller shows up at a press conference, it's going to be crazy. But there's a whole lot of conspiracy brain to unpack there. First, the Speaker of the House and his fellow Republicans are falsely claiming that millions of non-citizens illegally vote. Look, Republican election conspiracies are nothing new. But what makes those remarks from Johnson and co. even more outrageous is the brazen attempt to actually tie two right-wing conspiracies together, all in one with a bow. Their false claim of mass election fraud and their racist and frankly dumb replacement theory. We've talked about this on our show before. It's the once fringe but now apparently mainstream Republican dogma that Democrats and elites are purposefully bringing in migrants from third world countries in order to dilute the influence of political power of real Americans. According to Johnson and his colleagues, Joe Biden has opened the border to as many migrants as possible in order to activate them as fraudulent Democratic votes come November. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand. According to Jen Psaki, it is racist and crazy to think that Democrats are trying to take advantage of allowing illegals into the country for their own benefit when it comes to affecting the outcome of elections and their power in Congress, when we know for a fact that when illegals are counted as a part of a state's population, that helps when it comes to the amount of representatives they get in the House, right? And it does benefit states with more illegals, which tend to be Democrat states, right? Like California. Okay, so again, Jen Psaki wants you to think that, it's a conspiracy that Democrats are openly pushing illegals into this country to help them with elections. But, when it comes to Russia, though, that's totally legitimate, right? That Putin and Trump are working together to try to affect the outcome of the election, okay? So the illegals that pour into the country that we know for a fact benefit blue states because they do dilute the votes of citizens. Again, it's crazy and racist to think that, to believe that Democrats can be doing this on purpose. But Russia, Putin, he's definitely affected the outcome of elections. In fact, he might affect the outcome of the 2024 election, okay? This is what the mainstream liberal media is pushing. This is what they're selling people. Again, it's amazing. But again, you have some people in the mainstream liberal media that actually are sane and reasonable and grounded in reality. Like, for example, Fareed Zakaria, who, like you guys saw at the beginning of this video, essentially admitted that, Biden needs to adopt Trump's border policies. And he also is going to admit that the hush money trial against Trump is politically motivated, that the only reason this is happening is because the defendant's name is Donald Trump, which, again, is something that Republicans have been saying on these mainstream liberal media outlets, but yet this guy's colleagues have been denying that, right? They've been vehemently saying, no, that's not the case. None of this is politically motivated. But you have Reed Zakaria, again, who's a CNN host, saying, nah, I think that it is, okay? And he's going to explain this and much more when it comes to Biden seeking chances of being reelected in 2024, right? This guy is essentially going to admit that, yeah, I mean, it looks really bad for Joe Biden at this point, okay? He's going to break down the race as it currently stands, and it's just not going to be good for Democrats and Joe Biden. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Here's my take. When President Biden made clear he was going to run for re-election, I had a sense of what his election strategy was and thought it was an intelligent path to victory. After the chaos of COVID and Trump, Joe Biden would stand for normalcy and a rising tide of good economic news. Donald Trump would divide Republicans, with significant chunks of the party wishing that someone like Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis would be their nominee. Meanwhile, Trump would unite and motivate Democrats, allowing President Biden to focus on the votes of independents and swing states who threw the Electoral College to Trump in 2016 and to Biden in 2020. I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country.
Yeah, I definitely agree with him when it comes to that, right? And this is why I feel a lot more confident when it comes to citing these polls, right? I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, the polls are fake and the polls aren't real and the polls are not accurate. And I get it, right? I understand. But what he's saying about how the polls tend to underestimate Trump is 100% true. In 2016, Hillary, according to the polls, should have won, right? It underestimated Trump. Now, in 2020, the polls had Biden winning, but the election was closer than the polls suggested. I mean, at one point, Biden was up like 10 points over Trump in 2020, according to some polls. But again, the election still was pretty close, okay, for the most part. So, yeah, polls definitely tend to underestimate Trump. And with all the polls suggesting that Trump is winning, what that means to me is that the real numbers are probably better for Trump than the polls are suggesting, okay? And this is why, again, it looks really, really, really bad for Joe Biden at this point, because it's one thing if Trump was behind, 3, 2, maybe even a point, okay? I think that you could say, all right, well, Biden has some breathing room. The fact that, again, Trump is up, I think, on average 1.5 points means that Trump realistically is probably up more than that, right, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah. This is not good for Biden.
The economy has been in a robust recovery for more than 2 years now, with unemployment hitting a 54-year low in 2023 and increasing only slightly since then. But Biden is getting little credit for it. The shift here is stark. On the question of who voters trust more to deal with the economy, Trump has a 22-point lead over Biden, according to an NBC poll from January. This marks a 15-point bump for Trump compared to the same poll in 2020. Perhaps this is because inflation is a far more pervasive problem than unemployment, affecting all Americans every day. Perhaps it's because people's views on the economy now are largely derived from their broader attitudes towards the candidates. But whatever the reasons, it's a stunning reversal in the midst of a relentless stream of good economic news.
Well, I mean, the real reason is that Biden's economic numbers are fake. It is driven by government spending, okay? 25% of all the jobs created in 2023 were government jobs. And then you have healthcare, okay, which again is government subsidized. And then you also have hospitality, which are low wage jobs, not high quality jobs. These aren't exactly jobs leading to stable, long careers and retirements, right? So outside of the bad jobs that are being created, the rest of the jobs, again, are government jobs. This is why a lot of people do not feel that the economy is great, despite the propaganda from the mainstream liberal media and some of the government numbers. It's because the government numbers have been cooked by government spending, right? The real economy, the private sector, is probably in a recession right now. And I mean, that would make sense. The feds have raised interest rates to the highest that they've been in decades, right? So yeah, it would make sense for the private sector to be having mass layoffs, which are happening. And again, the only reason that the jobs report is as good as it looks is because government spending is hiding how bad it actually really is, how bad the real economy is. Okay, and that's a problem, and that's why you see that disconnect. But again, they don't dive into these numbers. They don't actually really do real analysis. They try to pretend like the voters are dumb. Well, the voters are just disconnected from reality. No. You're disconnected from reality, right? The media is disconnected from reality. Now, under Trump, here's the difference. Trump had great unemployment numbers, but when it comes to his numbers, unlike Biden, again, this was real economic growth, right? These were private sector jobs. This was being driven by the private sector and not by the government. That's the difference, right? That's the difference. That's why you didn't get all this inflation to come along with the economic growth under Trump, because the economic growth was actually real, okay? It was not government subsidized. So again, this is not super hard to figure out if you actually pay attention, but I don't think half of these people in the mainstream level media really pay attention, right? They just look at the surface level stuff. They don't look beneath the hood. And when you look beneath the hood of the Biden economy, you can understand why there's a disconnect between what the government is saying, what the mainstream liberal media is saying versus what the people are saying.
On cultural issues, Biden and Democrats benefit from the opposition to the Republican Party's position on abortion. But on the other great cultural issue, immigration, Biden is 35 points behind Trump as to who would handle it better. And I do wonder whether abortion will be as large an issue in a presidential race, given that reversing Roe v. Wade threw the issue to state governments and legislatures and not the federal government.
Well, let's hope not, right? But again, it just depends on some of the states. Like, for example, Arizona, that I believe is going to have it on the ballot. Florida may have it on the ballot. Florida is not going to really that big of a deal because Florida is solidly red. But in states where you have abortion that's going to be on the ballot, that's going to motivate the thotties to come out and to vote. A lot of them are going to vote for Joe Biden, and that's going to be an issue, right? Let's just hope that it's not so much of an issue that it affects the outcome of the election. But that is the only thing that is stopping me from basically declaring that Trump is going to win on election day 100%. The only thing I'm worried about are the young thotties of America, right? And them coming out and voting based off this one issue. We saw it happen in the midterms. We've seen it happen in some of these races that have happened since the midterms. I'm just hoping that it doesn't happen in the 2024 election. But that's the only thing that scares me. That is the only thing that scares me. But again, there's some polling that suggests that, hey, it's not going to be that big of an issue this time around in the 2024 election. Let's just hope that's the case.
Perhaps the most worrying new trend for the Democrats is that far from being the more unified party, they are now bitterly divided over the war in Gaza. Bernie Sanders has said the eruption of pro-Palestinian protests could be Biden's Vietnam, and even invoked the specter of Lyndon Johnson choosing not to run for re-election in 1968 because of the opposition to that war. The analogy is far-fetched. America then was itself sending hundreds of thousands of troops to Vietnam, with more being recruited from college campuses every week. But there's no denying that the party seems more openly divided than it has been in decades. Only 33% of Americans said they approved of Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, which is now opposed both by people who think he is too soft and people who think he is too hard on Israel. Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away. And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
That's a hell of an admission. That's a hell of an admission. Just saying. Just saying. It's not just a right-wing conspiracy. Everybody knows that these trials are politically motivated, right? This is political persecution. Everybody knows. If the defendant's name wasn't Donald Trump, this would not be happening. With the E. Jean Carroll case, it would not be happening. With the Letitia James business fraud thing, would not be happening. With what's going on in Georgia, would not be happening. With the Jack Smith classified documents case, January 6th, would not be happening. The only reason it's happening is because of Trump. That's it. Everybody knows it. Everybody can see it. But this is the first guy in the mainstream liberal media that actually admits it. Oh, well, yeah, this wouldn't be happening if the guy's name wasn't Trump, right? I guarantee you, this is what a lot of these people know behind closed doors. But they can't say it out loud. They can't say it out loud. They can't tell the truth on their networks. No, you can't do that. So, again, shout out to Fareed Zakaria here, who I don't think is a Trumper, right? I don't think that he actually wants to see Trump get elected. But, hey, he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth.
A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden.
Exactly. Exactly. Another headwind for Biden. That's probably the biggest one. Okay? Because even if RFK takes some votes away from Trump, you got to look at Cornel West, Jill Stein. Jill Stein basically cost Hillary the election in 2016, right? Especially, again, in some of these swing states like Michigan, for example. And it looks like that's going to happen again. So, again, all these things are against Joe Biden. All these things are against Joe Biden. If Joe Biden ends up winning, I'm going to have some serious questions, right? I'm going to have a lot of questions, right? A lot of people going to have some questions. Unless something dramatically changes between today and election day.
Things could change. Polls do suggest that were Trump to be convicted of a felony, it could shift votes in Biden's favor. The administration may be able to pull off a ceasefire in Gaza and then a broader political settlement that gives Palestinians political rights and Israel diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Trump could always embroil himself in some kind of scandal. But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative, on asylum policy, for example, and reverse these numbers. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020, but Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift could be a reflection of people's sense that the president's age is affecting his capacity to govern. And there's very little that Joe Biden can do now to change that perception.
Wow. Wow. Yo, it's bad. It really is bad. I can't do nothing but laugh, bro. Because everything is falling apart. Everything is falling apart. What is happening to the Democrats right now is just, wow, it's incredible to think about. Just everything. Everything has backfired. Again, it's what I tell you guys in politics, man. The pendulum always swings the other way, and boy, oh boy, has it swung the other way on Democrats. It is amazing. This is fascinating, right? What is happening should be studied in political science books for the next 100, 200 years. It really should be, right? Everything is backfired on Democrats, right? Their own extremists have turned against them. The Trump trials has fell apart. Their party is divided as hell right now. The economy is terrible. We have world wars going on. Again, it's wow. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.